Welcome to Holistic Health Space podcast. Today we have a special episode with Michael Maxsenti, a congressional candidate for California District 47. And we are having this today because we have a special election coming up for Proposition 50. So Michael, please give us a quick rundown of Prop 50, the purpose of it, what it proposes, and the potential effects if passed.
It's a hugely important issue that's been brought up here on many levels. So let me give you first off kind of a rundown of the parts of Proposition 50 to help the audience be educated about it so they can make an informed decision. First off, under Prop 50, the proposed congressional district maps, which were detailed in the Assembly Bill 604, they are intended to create up to 5 new Democrat-leaning seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. While the two maps might appear similar to somebody who just glances at them, in most respects, there's a real huge primary difference, which lies in the proposed map's strategic realignment of district boundaries to benefit the Democratic Party in our state here in California. Under Prop 50, the Democrats would dilute the Republican votes by using the gerrymandering techniques of what's called cracking and packing, which I'll explain in a minute. But something that's real important is in the last presidential election, as an example, the Republicans received over 40% of the votes in the congressional districts in California, which are 52. And we only received 17% of those seats. And that is how such a vast disproportionate representation is created through the process called gerrymandering. 40% of the votes were for Republicans, and yet only 17% of the 52 seats, a total of 9, were won by Republicans. So let me explain a couple of the techniques that are used in drawing these maps. First and foremost is called cracking. The proposed map would use this cracking technique to diminish Republican influence by scattering their votes across multiple districts. Dividing a voting block in this technique, the map drawers would split a geographically concentrated Republican voting block and merge the pieces into several neighboring districts that already lean Democrat. Outnumbered and then outvoted, this would ensure that the Republican voters, now in a minority in each of these new districts, are consistently outnumbered by Democrats. This effectively neuters the Republican voting bloc even further, preventing it from having a decisive impact in any single race. Let me give you one example. Cited in a commentary is the potential for Sacramento to be chopped up with its more conservative voters spreading into other districts to dilute their influence. And right here in Orange County, in Mission Viejo, for example, you would be in 3 different districts. Literally, if you lived across the street from each other at a corner, that corner will be divided into 3 different districts, totally diluting the impact of communities. So that's the technique called cracking. The other side of it is what they refer to as packing. Conversely, the proposed map would use packing to concentrate Republican voters into a very few districts, weakening their overall power, creating, quote, safe districts. With this strategy, the map would intentionally create a small number of districts that are overwhelmingly Republican. The party would win those seats by a large margin, but the excess voters are wasted and have no effect on other elections. This would limit the influence. By concentrating Republican votes, the map reduces their voting strength into a large number of competitive Democratic-leaning districts. The overall effect? The result is a reduced number of overall seats for the Republican Party, even if they win some districts by a large margin. The League of Women Voters noted that under this proposed Prop 50, more Democrats would be concentrated into some swing districts, which would strengthen the Democratic control over an even larger number of seats. The outcome of that? Through the combination of these techniques, the proposed map would shift California's congressional districts to a more aggressive pro-Democrat gerrymandering. The League of Women Voters published an analysis showing the new maps would give Democrats an advantage in at least 5 districts currently held by Republicans, and we only have 9 right now. Mm-hmm. In addition, it would strengthen their control in 5 swing districts. And according to the Public Policy Institute of California, this is primarily intended to offset partisan gerrymandering by Republicans in other states such as Texas. And I know we'll get into this issue of Texas because that is used as a big bludgeon of justification here in California. Mm-hmm. But it's a red herring. In addition to partisan shifts, the proposed redistricting under Prop 50 could have significant impacts on community integrity, voter engagement, minority representation, and the legislative dynamics. And when I say legislative dynamics, people can see here in California what the results of a single party control of our state has been. For basically 25 years, a supermajority held by the Democratic Party in our state has allowed that party to enact every piece of legislation in our state for the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. Much of it's done behind closed doors, but we all live in the results of those policies. We can see what single party control has done to our state. And when you take out the key to our republic of representative democracy is the free marketplace of ideas, the exchange, the challenge. It's through these kind of debates and discussions that real good policy can come forward. And we don't have people challenging those beliefs, challenging those principles or those policies, we end up with what we have in California.
So I just feel like this year is particularly bad. The amount of bad bills that passed or are about to pass. Is it just because I newly got into politics, or is it because Newsom wants to leave a huge impact before he leaves office?
Well, it's not that you just got into politics to realize this, but because you're in it, you now see how it's been done over the last 20 plus years to destroy our state. And I say destroy it. I don't mean that obviously literally, but we've gone from the number one state in education to now down, 37, 39, depending on which study you see. We used to lead the nation in environmental policies, infrastructure, social innovation. And when I was younger and I would travel internationally or even to other parts of the United States, and I'd say, I'm from California, people would go, wow, the California dream.
It's a place of envy. Yeah,
I want to go there. Tell me about what it's like to live in California. Now when you travel and people say, oh, so where are you from? I say, California. They kind of snicker. They look away. They go, you're still there?
Yeah.
And that's what's happened in just one generation of single party control of our state. And, we still lead in business innovation in many ways, and we're still, the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. There's a lot of things that California, because of our uniqueness and things here, still are wonderful. But it's created a situation where my children and most people's children can't live in the neighborhoods they grew up in. Most of our kids have to leave the state to afford. Our seniors and can't afford to live here. It's the lack of affordability. It's become a travesty of what's happened to our wonderful state. And that's one of the reasons why I got into politics again, was to help change that back.
Yeah, I would say our state is being literally destroyed. Just look at the streets of San Francisco, look at the streets of LA, and the crime rates. It's scary to live here. If you would, can you also kind of elaborate a little bit on, what effects on the federal level this bill will have, and especially, what is it going to do with Maha? Because we come from the Kennedy camp, and we want to make America healthy again. And most of us have noticed that the Democratic members in Congress all vote along their party line. They are all trying to sabotage whatever Kennedy is doing in HHS.
Well, the immediate impact of what they're trying to do is to get 5 more Democrats out of the state of California back into Washington, trying to export the policies of California to the national level. And what that will do will be to try to, well, first and foremost, it will grind to a halt immediately almost everything that Kennedy and Maha is trying to accomplish. It'll also grind to a halt those good things, the constitutional things that Trump is trying to do. And I want to point that out because of this issue of King, and there's some issues there. But that'll grind to a halt. And Maha, make America healthy again. Kennedy was really clear. It's not just to make America healthy again physically, but it was also mentally, spiritually, environmentally, and I add to that economically. The Maha is to make America great again on many levels. And it'll come to a grinding halt. Let me give you one quick, clear example of at the federal level, what they're doing here in our state to offset what Kennedy was already able to do at the federal level by this having this supermajority in California. And that is, they just passed in California the Assembly Bill 93, and they're trying to pass another state Senate Bill 144. And this was something promoted by the California Medical Association. And what the passage of this bill already did is to take away the ability of the state, the impact on medical freedom. And let me just give you a real brief summary of the impact of this bill here in California on medical freedom. And medical freedom, for those who aren't real familiar with it, is the emphasis on individual choice, anatomy, less state insurance mandated standardization. The 3 provisions of this bill, the Assembly bill that was just passed, the first and foremost is it mandates a baseline of preventative immunization list that must be covered. And that list that they passed is the list that as was effective from the Health and Human Services as of January 1 of 2025, before Maha was able to come in and change those regulations. They will put it so that the state only abides by the rules as of the end of last year. Second, it will shift immunization authority to the state health department's schedule instead of the national schedule. And the third thing it will do is it mandates the insurance coverage for the state-endorsed preventative services and immunizations. And this represents a significant ways in which the state codifies and strengthens a standard approach to preventative immunization care. While the law does not necessarily impose direct mandatory immunization for individuals, it focuses on coverage, insurance, recommendations, rather than compulsory vaccinations. It narrows the space for opting out of standard insurance coverage frameworks to schedule norms. And the impact on that is part of the bankruptcy, if you will, of our state is when our state legislature guaranteed health care through Medi-Cal to anyone, legal or illegal, in our state. So anybody who crossed into our state from anywhere,
that's the kicker. Yeah.
And the billions of dollars of revenue it takes to cover those people, and people, when they go revenue, well, where's that revenue come from? It comes from our fees. We see the dramatic cost increases in our gas, our cost of our car insurance, our cost just to go register a car in California. Heck, my wife,
Everything. Yeah.
yeah, and so through fees and taxations, they have to raise all this money out of the citizens who are working citizens or workers in the
Yeah.
California.
Yeah. We're double, triple, quadruple taxed.
That's where people don't think of. This is where the lack of fiscal responsibility. You asked about at the national level. When you take and can put back in place a majority in the legislature that is from the same democratic machine, this uniparty that has gotten our country into this mess, in my opinion,
Yeah.
over the last 25 years in nationally as well as here, the lack of fiscal responsibility. People don't necessarily realize the direct impact that has on almost everything. First and foremost, the fact that this huge debt that is being driven up, that is being passed off to future generations, immediately impacts our interest rates. So interest rates affect every business when they go to modernize, add equipment, expand their business. They need money. They have to pay a much higher rate, which then they have to put back into higher prices to us. For people trying to buy a refrigerator, buy anything on time, buy anything on a credit card, buy a home, the interest rates dramatically impact our ability for an affordable life.
Yeah.
And the worst killer is when our government, because it doesn't raise enough money through our taxes, despite the dramatic taxes that we pay right now, they then create money which drives up inflation. And inflation is the biggest driver, silent driver of destroying the value of your income and any of your investments. People don't realize that if you have inflation of 4% this month or 2%, they talk about it on a monthly basis. Well, wait a minute. Talk about it over the last 2 years. It's 20+% on most household goods.
Yeah.
Well, if your income didn't go up by 20%, your buying power just went down by 20%.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even include if you went to go buy a car or a house. So those are some of the dramatic impacts. Back to Prop 50, though, I want to point out to people the changes it will have on the ability to represent the diversity of our culture in Washington. So it will, this Prop 50 in California divides communities. The proposed map would alter the district boundaries, splitting communities with shared interests, shared history, and concerns. For example, the plan would divide specific cities and counties that are currently kept intact, forcing residents to organize across newly drawn lines and diminish their ability to influence legislation. Rural representation, like in Murdoch County, would split their population into different districts, further diluting their voice and diminishing their influence. So rural communities would even have less of an impact. Incumbent familiarity. People could become familiar with their representatives and try to hold them accountable, which is something that holding them accountable in today's world is very, very difficult. But this would strain even further the representatives of constituent relationships, forcing voters to build new connections with their elected officials. And the impact on voter engagement, it would reduce even further competition, which reduces turnout. One of the biggest reasons kids don't go to vote, or young people, they say, why? My vote doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because they can't see any direct connection between their vote and what their representatives vote on, or the outcomes that come on. So diluting this impact of the representatives will only further erode the voters and disempower them even further.
Yeah, the voting process now, it just feels like an empty shell. It doesn't matter what you vote for, what you vote against. It's always whatever the party wants.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on that issue of holding representatives accountable, because one of the things I get asked is what committee I would like to be on, and I say the Rules Committee, and people are kind of surprised. Why would you want to be on the Rules Committee when there's so many other things? And it's because the way they have rewritten the rules in Congress is so that they have all of these bills where they have multiple issues in them. And when you have multiple issues in a bill, Many of them are opposing from ideological perspectives. And then the leadership can dictate to their members how you must vote on this bill. If you don't vote on that bill, they will take the power of their endorsement away, and you will get what they call gerrymandered out through this process. And so it forces politicians who are there for a career, which is a separate issue we'll talk about, maybe touch on today even, but they're forced to fall in line and vote along what leadership tells them to vote, and the money directs most of that. And so you've got a person, Congress is designed to be the most representative of the people with elections every 2 years. That was purposeful. And so if a representative was voting against your interests every 2 years, you had a chance to vote them out and vote somebody in. So they're supposed to be held the most accountable to the people. But when you put these omnibus bills together and you can't then hold your elected official accountable for particular issues, that is what they've done on purpose. So one of the things that could be done is to make every issue a single issue vote. Every law would be a single issue law, so that you could hold each representative accountable. Did they vote for or against that law, and why? They would have, and that is something that could be done very easily, and it would force up the level of accountability and improve it dramatically, very quickly, so that voters could see what in the heck their representatives that they just elected are voting for. And if they don't like what they're voting for, then they can vote them out in 2 years. So that's one of the important things I wanted to point out.
I understand that historically redistricting was done by the Citizens Redistricting Commission. Please talk about what that is. Why is it important? And will Prop 50 render it obsolete beyond 2030? Well, in the text of the proposition, it does say it'll expire after 2030, right? But is that going to be the case? After 2030, are we going to gain the power of redistricting back and give it back to the Citizens Redistricting Commission?
Well, as we've seen over and over and over again, year after year after year, government can tell us what we want to hear, and then they can change the rules later. So have you ever seen them give up their power in the past? No. So they might say the right words right now, and it was written very well to say that, but they will have the authority to discount that like they've done for so many years. And again, with a supermajority, they don't have to go to the voters for anything. They can put anything on the ballot they want. So the chances of them actually giving up their power back to the people are, in my opinion, not only slim and none, but Slim's on that fast horse racing out of town. And if you believe that you can catch it, you're in a dream. But
they just put that provision there to cajole us into voting yes, right?
Right. Now, this issue that is the primary bludgeon about why people should vote yes on this is the fact that the Democrats in this state are saying, look, Trump convinced the Texas Republicans to do this already. They're going to take away 4 or 5 seats out of the Democrat hands in Texas, and they're doing that in Texas. So this is a direct result of that. That is a total misrepresentation. In Texas, believe it or not, Texas was once their house controlled by the Democratic Party. The Voting Rights Act was passed to eliminate as much gerrymandering and the dilution of minority votes as possible. Went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made a ruling on that. Texas policy under the Democratic control, if they redistrict the way they were directed under the Voting Rights Act, would have given 4 or 5 Democrat seats into a majority Republican district with a highly likelihood that they would lose those seats in the next election. Well, the Democrat-controlled House of Texas, their representative, did not do that. They did not implement it. And so what happened was that was brought up again. Now the House changed control into Republican hands, and the Republican legislature said, oh, we need to implement the Voters' Rights Act as it was passed. And oh, by the way, the consequence of that would be, gee, it looks like we would have 4 or 5 more Republican seats. Trump glommed onto that when he heard that news and said, yes, great, do that, and do it in other states, et cetera. Let's take out the Democrats everywhere we can. Well, that immediately became taken out of context and immediately used as, see, Trump is saying, do this in Texas. Well, what Texas was only doing was what they didn't do under the Voter Rights Act originally. And so that's a misnomer, but it's because of Trump's taking it out and using it, it became this bludgeon to get people to vote for it. And the unfortunate reality is the majority of states are red states controlled with a majority in their legislature. So this could set off a tit for tat type of governance in these gerrymandering state by state. And if that happens, right now, the Republicans would be able to, across the nation, actually do it in more states and probably offset that. But then that just throws our entire government representative policies out the window. We're supposed to be adhering to the Constitution and the way it was designed, not continue to disregard it and say we're protecting democracy, when in fact what they're doing is destroying our adherence to our democratically representative form of a republic.
Yeah, so this is not simply a redistricting arms race or tug of war for power. Texas, the case with Texas is nothing, represented in the media. I think even Fox News didn't represent correctly. They're calling that redistricting in Texas, Trump's power grab or something to that effect. I don't think you can find that piece of information anywhere in the media.
It's hard. And my assumption could make an ass of you and me, but that assumption why Fox might be doing it is that they want to set this tit for tat off so that the other states will do the same thing and override what California's doing. So, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Where instead of everybody saying, take a step back, folks, let's hold everybody to the Constitution. Let's get back on track to that more perfect union that our founders envisioned for us. Let's get back on that path and move towards that more perfect union instead of continuing to move away from it. And that's one of the big things from my theme of my campaign is the founding fathers didn't leave us that path to a perfect union, or didn't leave us the perfect union, but they left us a path towards one. Yes. And we must get back on that path. And one of the things that I will do in Congress is to join forces with those others who will hold everyone, including myself, accountable to the Constitution and to the people, not to the leadership of a party or the special interests. And that's where I am going back to Congress to be one of the reinforcements in this responsible revolution to reform our political system, to get it back on that path towards that more perfect union.
So how should people vote? Obviously, we vote no on Prop 50. And do you recommend vote early or on the day of election day, or what do we do? Do we mail it in? Do we drop it in a drop box, or do it in person? What is the most preferable choice?
Well, depending upon what county you live in and stuff, that varies. But I encourage, first and foremost, absolutely vote no. And I went and door knocked a couple of days here in my district and only went to Republican registered voters. And surprisingly, as many as 1 in 4 thought, oh, yeah, we've got to stop this. I'm going to vote yes on Prop 50. I said, no. So it is written purposefully, very confusing. The ads that are out on mainstream media are extremely confusing. So it's important that everybody understands. Vote no, so we stop Proposition 50 from being enacted. Keep the districts here. You asked a question that we didn't address, which is something the citizens redistricting commission. That was something passed as a constitutional amendment in 2008 on all of the state-run offices, and in 2010 they passed an amendment to that, making it for the congressional offices. And then over 34,000 California citizens participated in a process that supposedly was a balanced panel of 4 Democrats, Republicans, and independents. Well, in California, nothing is really balanced that way. And so it did its own job of redistricting and gerrymandering, but at least it had the appearance and attempt to do a relatively balanced job. But as I pointed out earlier, even with 40% of the votes, the Republican voices have been marginalized to 17% of the representation. But at least it's far better than what could happen. And hopefully we can improve on that over time, that citizens redistricting, so that we truly get a much more proportional representation of not just the Republican voices, but the independent voices, the community voices. And that's where I'm going to be fighting for proportional representation. So I wanted to point that out to people before we sign off.
Anything else you would like to add before we conclude this session?
No, other than the fact that I would encourage everyone to come and help support me. And then people will say, well, gee, I don't live in your district. And let me just remind them that, yes, you may not be able to vote for me, but every single vote and thing I do in Congress will be on behalf of you. And the only thing you can't do is vote for me, but your contributions in terms of money, in terms of volunteering, spreading the word through social media, there's lots of things you can do to help get other people elected like myself, who are citizen leaders, who are not people going there to create a career out of it. They're going there to take a sense of urgency into Congress to directly change the impact it has on our daily lives. And so I would ask people to look at Maxsenti4Congress.com, and in whatever way you're capable of supporting our campaign and looking around and helping elect other citizen leaders, people who are not career politicians, who are committed, not committed in words, but look at their life story. What have they done? That's the key. And for those who don't know me, just to give them a quick sense of who I am, I was the youngest president of a division of American Standard. I was a COO for a joint venture of Nissan. I started a small business and for 20 years built the second largest tourism publishing business in California. And while I was doing that, folks, I was on the board of directors out at Children's Hospital for 14 years. I created the 2 largest fundraisers at that time in their history. And while I was doing that, I coached 19 sports teams and was president of the Laguna Beach Little League. I've been committed to our community and to business. I believe I have the ability to help bring people together, help create innovative solutions for our problems, and help drive us back to the Constitution, and that ask for their support. And with that, Scarlett, you've been a wonderful help. We met through the Maha agenda. Maha and Kennedy. Kennedy is one of my inspirations for doing this, and I know the wonderful people behind Maha, the moms and dads who have dealt with the results of these policies that have been allowed to go, has devastated many people's lives as they envision them. And together we can make America healthy again, and make it healthy not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, economically, and environmentally. Together we can do this. And so together we must work towards that.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, thank you so much for coming on, Michael. It's been a pleasure.